So when Viviana, Fiona, and Aisha invited us to join them in a suitcase of poetry this year, we started discussing about points that we felt were relevant to our work as poets, educators, and human being at this particular time that's challenging for everyone in the world. So I think it's really beautiful that we can connect from two geographically different and very far away places to try and find a common grounding in our mutual work.
Yes.
We discussed several points, but then I think one of the things that interested you a lot was the relationship to poetry throughout time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask you, why is it so important for you to think about this together?
Maria, I have always felt that how poetry works, traversing or breaking all the barriers, how it goes to, even though we are so far away, but our lives are so connected. Like we both happen to be educators, and we are facing the same problems, kind of. Even though my situation is there, some differences are there, but as educators, we are similarly worried about our students, and as poets, we feel trapped in a kind of sometimes we feel kind of trapped. At the same time, we feel that we should face those difficulties of loneliness. And you were particularly suffering from COVID of family members. And in my case, in my school, some students and some teachers are affected by that, my friends. So in this situation of pandemic, and pandemic also has brought about a lot of changes in our country in various factors, like it's a political situation and employment wise problems are there. So as poets, how do we respond to the world which is surrounding us and to the world which is inside us, and how are the words which are inside us, the feelings, how can it travel through time? So that thought keeps on throbbing in my mind. That's why I told you that we should discuss that.
Yes, I was really struck when we started talking by the fact that you were thinking about time, and I was more thinking about space. And I thought this was interesting because even in the poem that I finally wrote as a turning out of the dialogue we've had in these months, I think it's very important to consider the issue of belonging and also the issue of trying to find a common ground, which doesn't mean flattening all the experience of poetry and of the world that we have, and doesn't even mean necessarily mean talking about contemporary events such as this, living with the pandemic, that of course in our daily life is something that is very present for everybody. But I also feel that poetry gives us a sense of giving us a common space to recognize each other and to engage with the thoughts of people from the past. But as you told me in one of our dialogues, these people from the past, they become present throughout their work, and sometimes they are even more close to our way of seeing things than people that are alive and contemporary to us. So I'm really interested in talking a little bit more about this with you, because you were telling me that now in India there's a big debate between those who think that poetry should just address social issues and people that think that poetry should concentrate on the eye of the human being that is the poet and his or her own experience.
The debate, actually, it's a silent debate. There is a kind of, not like they are discussing in the forums. It's like the viewpoints or the perspective. So when especially it's not, it's there more, the debate is more in my language, that is in my vernacular, Malayalam, where the individual, nowadays, more talks about talks are focusing on the individual experience. Such poems are getting, a section of people thinks that it's more important. But I think what I feel is that all our thoughts are related to the space where we belong and where we interact, like you were saying about the space. I think that the individual space is connected to the society, and each and every word which we write, it comes through the time and to the people, or that experiences of our people, culture. All those elements are there when we are writing the poetry. We cannot simply restrict all those experiences to that individual level. That's what I feel. Now, that kind of debate, I think it will be going on for a long time, because that perspective it depends upon the various like comfort zones, privileges. Sometimes when I am coordinating a women poets forum here, so when I talk to poets from different places and different cultural and social backgrounds, I feel sometimes even writing a line is a big achievement for women who are managing homes, who are working. So a lot of things like that are there. So that writing itself is a political act. So I think even though people may say many things, but eventually we are writing in a space where we constantly interact with people who have lived in the past, who are living with us, and who will be living in the future. That's what I feel.
I really like this idea that you brought up, because this really defeats the loneliness that everybody experiences, not just because of this particular historical time, but because I think that loneliness and solitude are really an unescapable condition, both of the human heart at some point, and therefore also of the site of the poem and of poetry itself, because there is a deep place where you are alone, where you have to listen to what's coming to you from the world, from your experience, and from this ongoing dialogue, as you say, with the dead, with the living, with the present, with the past, and also I like that you added with the future, because I sometimes have a feeling that in this era that is super concentrated on contemporarity, we never put ourselves in the perspective that there is still a space and a time even after us. So while I don't think that one should write with an audience in mind, but this idea that the history of human culture doesn't get lost in the nothingness, is something that's really reassuring somehow, that really opens a perspective. And sometimes when you say that people are too concentrated on their I and on individual experience writing, I think that even opening an eye to the future is really important for the poetry that we are trying to make at this time.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I would like to try and read the piece that came up discussing about this, which is a poem on belonging. And I was, as you will hear, it also has a lot to do with the fact that we are now connecting in a third language somehow, because English is not a mother tongue, or not the only mother tongue for any of us. And the language itself is already a kind of a third space and a common ground. And we've been discussing, even if then, because of the complexity of our lives in these months, we couldn't really finally do everything we were planning to do.
Yes.
I think that we just started the dialogue, so this is not the end of the dialogue, but a beginning. Belonging. This language is not my homeland. We long for a language to be in that can put the world back together. Nostalgia, the pain of return. How do we return to a language that sings in the body, yet shines like the fresh light of October? I have known many returns of the same pain. I have known abandonment. I am longing for the language that fixes the broken chunks in the tableware, not with gold, but with wings. I have seen the fog turn gold, a fire that doesn't burn. So as you can see, the attempt was to convey this idea that we've been discussing on a lot, which is how does language repair the broken pieces of the world, and how does language become a common ground to dwell in, at least temporarily.
Now, so as you were saying that language becomes about, and as I was telling that speaking to the future, I was not saying that we should be thinking about an audience, but I was saying that we are becoming a medium. Our language is becoming a medium for the past, the present, and for the future. It depends on whether somebody will take it or not, but still, I think that there will be some resonating areas. I like your poem. I liked it a lot when I read it first. So it will go on. We are part of a process. That's what I feel. So shall I read mine?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So this is trajectories. This is what I felt when I thought of our conversation, and I felt the same when there are a few friends of mine who are working in the COVID condition. So let's say anxiety and everything comes, but there are some spaces when we try to hide ourselves. That can be our language. That can be that ecstasy brought out by the poetry which is there in our hearts. So amidst chaos, we try to hide in those spaces, and we what we say is we are able to go on because of that, I think. So trajectories, our eyes fluttering under the same sky, but we feel the fleeting sand at different shores of the same salty, throbbing thoughts. Our voices smell of blood and moss from the walls of those ancient caves where darkness heard its own sound. Our finger marks everywhere with their contours marked by those ants carrying memories to be kept for another rainy season. And I wonder, listening their little murmurings, will all those longings sprout with tender leaves and tiny roots traversing the depths of a silent dream, or evolve as fluttering buzzes with stings which can haunt one such that they trace the channels of those old rivers with their currents meeting the salty soil and tasting the torrents to be born. That's what I felt.
Your poem
As you said,
resonates to me a lot as we get to the end of this conversation, which could go on and on, but it's almost time to at least say till the next time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you noticed that you used the word longing, which is also a key point in my poem. And I think what happened between us was this not quite writing together, but living together into language, even with all the difficulties of connection that we had, technically speaking. And also the longing, if I may say so, for something else that is still to come. Because we discussed a lot about also having to let go of our expectations in this dialogue. And so I think with longing and belonging, we can finish our conversation for now. A longing and a belonging to language and to the life of this present time, I think.
Yeah, thanks to Fiona and Vivian and Aisha for this opportunity again.
Yes, we're really grateful.
Yeah.